hold short runway 1 using taxiway Charlie, cross runway 4 Alpha Juliet, American 1235.
Good evening from Washington,
D.C.
D.C.
This
is the first time I want to try to narrate a video of flying the Boeing 737 here on Microsoft Flight Sim 2020. This is no doubt my favorite aircraft, personally in the real aviation world and also here in the sim. The models that I've been able to fly on the simulator have been the next generation 737 models, so the Dash 700, the Dash 800, the Dash 900 ER, and the Boeing business jet. Today we're on a 737-800, which I intentionally made flight 738. American Airlines, currently parked in Washington, D.C. These are the current weather conditions here in D.C. I'm in Arlington, just a few miles north of the airport right now. We're approaching sunset.
Roger Southwest 1082.
And we're gonna do a very quick hop. Actually, I did this hop in real life. Washington to Philadelphia. And if you're wondering, well, why would there be a commercial flight for such a short distance, 120 miles or so? Well, American Airlines has a hub here in DC and a hub in Philly. And the Philly hub is gonna have departures to Europe. So passengers that want to connect is the reason we're going to be able to perform such a short flight on a relatively big airplane, 180 something passengers. So it makes sense. And I think it's still faster than driving if you try I-95 these days, or the last 20 years for that matter. Okay, so I've noticed that on YouTube, other video applications, a lot of real-world pilots have evaluated the 737. This 737 is designed by a Precision Manuals Development Group, PMDG, led by a retired United Airlines captain, Rob Randazzo, who happens to be a great computer programmer. I used his first 737 20 years ago, back in the days of Flight Simulator 2004, or even Flight Simulator 2002. This is again one of the best, most realistic airplanes out in the simulator right now. Before this version of the simulator, prior versions of the simulator, this has always been, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of many pilots and just simmers, one of the best aircraft recreations out there. And there's a lot more to come from PMDG as Flight Simulator 2020 continues to develop, because it is a work in progress. I've been simming since 1988, and back then you needed a couple of floppy disks, a very basic flying program. But today we're mostly getting our data real time from the internet. One of the things Flight Sim 2020 has is photogrammetry. So basically you're going to see data acquired from Bing Maps, Microsoft, and the 3D models that are going to be formed from the photogrammetry data. I have a 1 gig internet connection, so I definitely, if anybody wants to get into simming and getting this real world data, a fast internet connection will definitely be very beneficial. So we're going to go back in the cockpit. Like I said, it's going to be a very quick flight from DC to Philly. I'm entering the aircraft on a short turnaround, which means most systems are already on. I don't have to start from scratch. Dispatch already has given me the flight plan from here to Philly.
Washington Ground Delta 2244 requesting
and the flight management system is going to help me load the plan dispatch gave me. We're going to be departing to the north and making an immediate left turn to follow the river and avoid restricted airspace in Washington, D.C.
044 with uniform
like I said,
ready to
I
taxi
want to just
IFR.
name my flight
Delta
or
2244
number my flight the same as the
taxi to
aircraft
hold
series.
short of
So
runway 1
American
via
Airlines
taxiway Kilo
738.
Golf Juliet, cross runway 22 Juliet. Contact tower on 119er, decimal
And
1 when
dispatch
ready.
Asami runway 1, like I said, we're going to use the standard instrument departure Delta Oscar Charlie Tango Romeo 5.
Taxi to and halt short runway 1 using
And the
taxiway
transition
Kilo Golf
point
Juliet, cross
after
runway
this
22 Juliet, Delta
SID
2244.
is going to be Delta Quebec Oscar. Philadelphia, dispatch set to expect ILS, instrument landing system, on runway 27 right. And we're gonna go ahead and just execute. They didn't give me a standard arrival procedure for Philly, so we're probably just gonna get vectored into the final approach. I also need to request the current performance data for the aircraft, and I'm gonna be doing that right now. It's gonna be an automated process. I mentioned this is a continuous work in progress, continuous improvement when it comes to these simulators and these aircraft.
Washington ground southwest
PMDG
2530
has
requesting pushback.
a very
Southwest 2530 pushback request
Boeing
accepted.
specific game plan for the next couple of years. So they've been working on the 737 since
Washington ground Delta
2021.
5818 with uniform ready to taxi
And like I said, the
IFR.
product's really mature. The next major upgrade to the product will be to reproduce the flight tablet. The flight tablet can be hanged here on the side by the window. So it's basically an iPad or any kind of tablet where you're going to get be able to calculate performance data, have airport information for all the procedures for your departure and your destination. If you're old like me, you remember in the old days, pilots would carry a very big briefcase full of charts. Now you can just get them all into one iPad and just hang it in this location. Right now, I'm also getting a real-time feed into my regular iPad at home, so you cannot see it here. But like I said, in a few weeks, a few months, we're going to be able to actually see the flight tablet here, and we're going to have better calculations, more accurate calculations, and a more user-friendly interface, if you will. And just to give you an idea of what we can pull from our charts, again, the tab is going to be here in the future, so you're going to get some of this data, like the flight plan. I'm going to go ahead and unload my previous flight plan. That was from another flight. Dismiss this, unload this flight plan, and we're going to just load the current one. We're going to import it from the SimBrief planner that I used earlier before I went online, or before I started recording. So you can see this very short route between DC and Philly, very short. My location.
Taxi to and halt short runway 1 via taxiway Kilo 1 Kilo Kilo 5 Juliet, cross runway 22 Juliet Southwest 2530.
And I can actually add some of the procedures. So we already know we're runway one, using the departure standard instrument departure Delta Oscar Charlie Tango Romeo 5, transitioning Delta Quebec Oscar, arriving in Philly on runway 27 right, and we're going to be using ILS runway 27 right. And final approach here. The ILS is the instrument landing system, for those not familiar with this, and that's going to be the system that's going to get your airplane on the ground, especially when there is really poor visibility. I generally like to put the airplane in manual flight mode once I see the runway, have it in sight, and just hand fly it just to maintain practice. You can actually almost automate just about the entire flight from takeoff to landing, but that kind of takes away the fun out of flying too, so keep that in mind. I can also pull up my map of the airport. Once the tablet is online, many airplanes today, just because of new technology, new software, you can actually have a moving map display, and we can reproduce the moving map here. So I'm currently parked in the C terminal here in Washington. I'm gonna push back. I'm gonna taxi over to runway 1 and depart to the north, and again, and make that immediate left turn to avoid restricted airspace in our nation's capital. Okay, so we're gonna continue with this pre-flight. I'm gonna turn the tablet off. I don't need it right now, and we're gonna go back here to the airplane. Okay. So like I said, it's my first recording, but I hope some of the feedback that I got is just to narrate some of these flights and explain some of these basics in very layman's terms.
American 5120 taxi.
I do suggest, if you do like to like aviation, like YouTube, a lot of real-world 737 pilots have used the PMDG 737 to make some great videos, well-produced videos, can go into a lot of depth. I can also simulate those failures that obviously you don't see very often, and that the pilots in the real world have to get trained on every 6 or so months. It's really neat. What I plan is an incident-free flight here to Philly.
Washington ground southwest 2069er requesting.
Another thing I'm going to be able to use on my
Washington ground southwest
iPad or my flight tablet would be the airplane's checklist. One of the shortcuts they have here is to have a condensed checklist here in the control column. It's going to give you before takeoff, after takeoff, descent, approach, landing. So I can also use this for reference purposes. One of the questions that I get about this, what are the limitations? For one thing, there is no force feedback. What I mean by that is you cannot feel the weight of the airplane on the column. I can tell when the airplane is maybe just pointing the nose down too much or pointing the nose up too much, so I can trim it very easily. But there is really none of that heavy airplane, light airplane feel on the control column. The control column for me, I bought a one that's just like the Boeing column seen here.
Washington ground southwest.
It's basically like using a fly-by-wire control like the Airbus airplanes have. But still, very realistic, to be honest, but the force feedback is definitely something that's missing right now. The other thing that's missing as of today is weather radar. Oddly enough, the previous flight sim versions had great weather radars, so you can see the green, yellow, red colors, pink colors for areas of dense precipitation, wind shear, etc. They have not been able to reproduce that here yet. It's a work in progress, like I said. Hopefully they'll get there pretty soon. Because having a weather radar is always pretty nice. It does have an amazing terrain radar. If you see some of my videos flying in Colorado and Colombia, you can see the terrain radar really light up with very bright red, yellow colors. And a few calls that there's terrain nearby. It's really, really neat. So, I'm gonna request. I requested my performance data for the airplane. Okay.
Taxiing hold short runway 1 using taxiway
Got the data entered.
Juliet, cross runway 22 Juliet American Tree 459er.
I'm just gonna double check a few things here before we continue.
Taxi 2 and hold short runway 1 via taxiway Kilo Papa Kilo Bravo.
I'm gonna
Papa
compare
Charlie,
what I have here on my flight management computers to the dispatch printout. Well, it's not much of a printout, but it's mostly what I have on my tablet. Just make sure everything matches. There's continuity with the route that we're planning. There's also going to be, let me see, there's going to be a wind component, an average wind component. We are probably not going to go very high. I'm going to wait to see what altitude ATC is going to assign me. I'm going to request clearance very, very soon. But it looks like the average wind is going to be coming from the west at about 20 knots. Again, we're not going very high, so we're not going to get a big effect. The winds you really want to take into account in some of these transcontinental flights, if you're going eastward, you get nice tailwind. Even if you're hopping the pond to the UK, France, or rest of Europe, you're usually gonna get a great tailwind. But then when you're going west, you're gonna have a headwind, which is gonna make it for it's gonna result in a longer flight. Okay, so my average wind is going to be coming from the southwest, 216, and the speed's going to be 13 knots. Another thing I want to figure out is how much fuel the aircraft will wind up using. Our alternate airport is JFK, New York. If for some reason we cannot land in Philly, so we're gonna carry some extra fuel for that. And we're gonna be expecting for this flight plan. By the time we're on the ground, we're gonna have reserves according to my printout here.
Washington ground southwest 2300 requesting
They're
pushback.
saying final reserves are gonna be 2,400 pounds, but then we have fuel taken into account for our alternate airport, additional taxi time, holding times. So we're going to have plenty of fuel,
Washington
is really what I'm trying to say.
2876 requesting pushback. Southwest 2876 pushback request accepted.
Alright, so we're going to continue here. We expect to use 9.4. Okay. Now, when we take off, I'm gonna zoom in here on our engine display. You can see this number 99.7 in red. It's kind of the current limit of how high a thrust I can apply during takeoff, but I can definitely adjust this because just like when you have a car, you don't want wear and tear on your engine.
Southwest 2300
based on temperature, pressure, runway length, aircraft performance, you can actually do something that's called a D-rated takeoff. So again, you don't have to charge it up to the red line or even this green line. I can bring it even lower. Once we get the flight tablet, again, it's going to go over here. We're going to have some very accurate takeoff performance calculations. I'm going to put an assumed air temperature of 42 degrees, which again is going to derate my thrust. So you see the number now is a little lower, it's like 96 for the N1. So you see the green arrow here in the center screen and the red line. We are not going to be using full power. Again, this is going to give you more engine life, use less fuel. So again, think about it as a car, wear and tear. Also environmentally friendly to have D-rated takeoffs too. I live here in Arlington, so I can hear the aircraft departing every day, but a lower power setting means less noise.
Washington ground, Alaska 771 requesting pushback.
I'm going to put 5 degrees of flaps.
Pushback request accepted. Washington ground, Delta
My rotation is going to be 136.
Requesting pushback.
That's when I'm going to be raising the nose to take off. My V1 is that final decision point. Are we going to do this takeoff? Or are we going to abort it? So that's why I have my brake set to reject of takeoff, RTO, Romeo Tango Oscar. I want to give myself a little more room. Again, I don't have a performance calculator yet, but I'm probably going to take away about 5 knots here, so maybe like at 129, have my V1. Yeah, give me time to a little time to decide. Do we proceed with the takeoff or not? When you get to V2, is can you actually fly this plane on one engine? Should one engine shut down on you? And my pilot friends can correct me if there's more nuance to this. Our trim's going to be 442, so I'm going to be able to confirm my flaps on my trim as part of my checklist procedure. Okay.
Washington ground, Alaska 771, requesting the end of pushback.
We're going to do
Alaska
a pre-flight
771
checklist
request
first.
to end pushback received.
You know how when you're in the back as a passenger,
Washington ground Delta,
you have an
220
oxygen mask
requesting
drop
the end of
down from the
pushback.
ceiling. The pilots have their oxygen mask here on the side.
220
One of the things we're going to do during the
request
pre-flight
pushback
checklist is make sure we get good oxygen. And here's where the mask is stowed.
Washington ground,
Or
American
stored.
2907, requesting pushback.
And I can start lowering this handles
American
on the chairs.
2907 pushback request accepted.
Those of you who are frequent flyers usually notice there's always one or two pilots in the back of the plane. There can always be an observer, so if some pilots just got to fly on standby, it's done for the day, that pilot can just sit here in the back and watch the flight. Alright, so I'm going to continue with my pre-flight checklist. Our navigation, transfer, and display switches are normal and auto. Our window heat is on, so we're going to put the windows, we want to heat them up. We're going to be going up high.
Alaska 771 taxi to and halt short of runway 1
Pressurization is going to be
Kilo
automatic.
Bravo Papa Charlie, cross runway 4 Alpha Juliet. Contact tower on 119er.
My assigned cruising altitude is going to be 15,000 feet. So I'm going to put that as the maximum here on a
Taxi to
pressurization.
and halt short runway 1 using taxiway Whiskey Kilo Bravo Papa Charlie, cross runway 4 Alpha Juliet Delta 2206.
In Philadelphia, the altitude on touchdown is going to be
Washington
86
ground,
feet.
United 4441.
And I want to close this route here also. You want continuity when you're checking your navigation waypoints. So it's at 86 feet, so we want to just round up to 100 here. Doesn't make a big difference here, but when you're at the higher altitude airports like Denver, Colorado Springs, Salt Lake City, it's very important to put that landing altitude. I'm going to try to accelerate to 250 knots as quickly as possible after takeoff. And I'm also going to start with my runway heading, but I mentioned I'm going to be making a very quick left turn. So my initial runway heading is going to be 7 degrees. But again, it'll be an immediate left turn. So I'm just going to follow the river, the Potomac River, out of here. Let's see what's going on here. I am going to set my parking brake when the ground chocks are disconnected, the blocks. I need to turn on my auxiliary power unit. But right now, my airplane is being fed by a ground power. And the ground power card, you can see it here. So here's the ground power card. And you can see the cable, so it's next to the nose, the cable is pretty much feeding all the power to the airplane. Okay, so I'm going to switch to APU, I'm going to ignite it. The APU is a small engine in the tail cone of the plane. So when I hit the start switch, I want to open up its fuel valve, its fuel pump. It's going to be igniting here, and you can hear the whining and the humming of the APU coming on. And you will see some exhaust coming from the tail cone here in a few seconds. And you can already see the exhaust. So it'll take a few more seconds to be fully running, and I'm gonna switch my power from the ground power unit to the APU once the blue light in the middle is 2 other blue lights of the engine generator lights comes on. That's gonna be my APU generator. Everybody's on board. I'm gonna put auto on the seat belts. I'm still waiting for that APU to be fully lit. Now it's fully lit, so I'm going to transfer everything to the APU. And now I can set my brake. And here we're going to simulate the pushback. So you won't see this in real life. You're going to be just talking to the ground. But I'm going to control my pushback from here. I have a tug being attached to the nose wheel. There it is. And we want to get our doors closed. By getting our doors closed, I'm basically just going to get rid of this ground connection. Like I said, I already set my parking brake. So menu, actions, and I can get all this, the wheel chocks, the blocks removed. I'm gonna keep my pushback page open because I'm gonna be doing the pushback from here. And I'm also gonna get this clearance request. I'm not gonna push the jetway back just yet. I want to get my clearance. So let's see. Okay, another limitation here is the air traffic control. It's not the best, and you can see here it is grayed out, so it's not even functioning right now. So I'm not going to damage the airplane, but I'm going to have to just push back the airplane with the gate seal attached. I cannot request a disconnection. Let me see if I can switch the radio frequency here. Maybe I can do that. Washington ground, clearance. Okay, I think we're back. Washington ground, IFR clearance. This is what I want. Okay, so somebody is talking over me here. But this is working. I'll talk about some of these ATC limitations also as the flight continues. Okay, here's my clearance
Washington
request.
ground American 738 IFR to Philadelphia, ready to copy.
American 738 is cleared to Philadelphia Airport as filed. Takeoff runway 1 climb and maintain 11,000 feet. Departure frequency is 124.2 squawk tree 403.
I'm going to acknowledge by reading this back. So we have a text-to-speech program here. So you'll do the talking for you and for the ATC. There are programs where you can actually interact and talk to ATC. I haven't gotten that fancy just yet.
American 738 readback correct. Contact ground on 121.7.
So we have clearance. And we're going to get this jetway disconnected.
Washington ground American 738, could you please disconnect the jetway from the aircraft?
Okay, and you can see the jetway being disconnected. As I was continuing my pre-flight checklist, I wanted to make sure the instruments had our runway heading, which is 7 degrees. Our current altimeter is 3003, so 30 inches. Maybe a little bit of a nudge there downward. Let's see. 3002. Yeah. Alright, I want to make sure my parking brake is set. My engine start levers are cut off completely. And the before start checklist, we want to make sure the flight deck door is closed and locked, which it is. Here's the flight deck. The flight deck door control is at the very bottom corner of the pedestal. I already have my passenger sides on. I already made my fuel calculations, and now I want to turn on all the fuel pumps. I am not going to need the center fuel pumps that are above the main ones, mainly because it's a very short flight, so we don't have to put any fuel in the center tank.
Delta 5665 taxi to gate Echo 48 via taxiway Kilo, cross runway, tree, Kilo November.
So we've entered V1, we know VR, we know V2, we know our heading, our altitude. We've completed the pre-flight. We want to make sure all the trims are 3 and 0. Our briefing is completed. We're going to be taxiing to runway 1. And you know when you sit in a terminal, you sometimes see the aircraft lights. Well, one of them is going to be the anti-collision light. The anti-collision light is just a little red beacon. I'm going to turn it on right now. This little red beacon is going to indicate that the engines are going to be on very soon. So you can see the little red beacon like on the top middle of the aircraft. And it's also going to indicate that the plane's in motion. So everybody on the ground knows to keep their distance. Oh, it's all about safety. And with that, our before start checklist is completed. So I'm going to go ahead and request pushback.
Delta 5665, hold position. Caution other traffic.
My brake is on.
United
We're going to get the
4441,
chocks
hold
removed.
position caution beyond
And
the
we're going to start
taxiway.
pushback.
Cockpit to ground.
Hold position Delta 5665.
Go ahead.
United
Clear
4441,
for pushback
continue
and start
taxi.
tail straight out.
Delta 5665, continue taxi.
Roger that. Ready for push straight back. Brakes off.
Washington
Okay,
ground,
brakes off for
American
pushback.
3544 request taxi to the gate. American
release.
3544 taxi to gate Echo 59er via taxiway Sierra November. Roger Delta 5665.
Brakes released. Here we go.
And we're in motion.
Taxiing
Okay.
to gate Echo 59er using taxiway Sierra.
Now, I
November
mentioned how the
American
APU gives
3544.
me power here in the aircraft. I don't need to rely on any outside ground connections. But we do need to control the flow of the
Roger,
air.
United
The engines are
4441.
air started. Right now the air is circulating in the cabin. Right now it's 27 degrees Celsius. It's a mild to warm afternoon. But we're going to momentarily turn off the airflow in the cabin. This is dedicated to the engines and engine start. So if you fly a lot, you know how the air becomes very quiet before engines start. That's what's happening. So if you kind of hear the hum right now in the air, I'm going to turn off the packs. And you can hear that silence now. And we're going to start engine number 2. I'm going to bring on the central display unit here at the bottom.
Pushback complete. Parking brake set.
We're going to be calculating
Brake set.
the turbine speed, the N2. Typically, when the N2 gets to about 23, I'm going to flip on the engine starter for number 2.
Alright,
Just
steering
let it
pin is
start.
disconnected. Watch for the slip release from guidance on your left. Have a good flight.
And the tug operator has pretty much released the tug. There are some texture issues here on the ground. I'm going to have to find out why. It looks like there's grass here on the ground, but that shouldn't be the case. And you can hear the engine coming to life. Okay, we're going to go with number 1. That click meant the starter switch completed number 2 start. Now we're going to start number 1. I can turn my taxi light on in the meantime. I have nobody to blind in front of me. All the ground crew has cleared. Again, get this N2 speed to about 23 and start the other engine. It's going to take a few more seconds to get going. In the meantime, I want to make sure my control surfaces are working. So this display is for the systems. So I want to go pitch, fully back, fully forward, roll, fully right, center, fully left, center, and the rotor pedals. So fully right, center, fully left, center. Both engines are on, so now I'm going to turn on the engine generators. Now all airplane power comes from the engines. I can turn the APU off, the auxiliary power unit. And I turn the packs back on to get some air back into the cabin. Alright, I'm gonna just pan outside very quickly. You can see the airplane. Engines are on. Brakes are on. So it's gonna roll anywhere just yet. And just a very nice sunset here in DC. And again, I need to figure out why we're getting grass here on the apron. I think it's a program issue, but again, that's fine. We're worried about flying. Let's see. I'm gonna clear the systems here. I mentioned I want to make sure everything matches flaps 5. So before takeoff checklist, I want to make sure my flaps are 5. So here my flaps handle is already moving, and I want the trim to be 447, essentially 4.5. So we're gonna just adjust the trim here. It's gonna be the right setting for rotation, and I can say this before the takeoff checklist is completed, before I start taxiing you. It's also getting darker, so I can also start lighting up the panel. Just give it some light. It's gonna be easier to read as the evening approaches, progresses. So we're gonna get some lights here. Right now, I'm mostly gonna light up the instruments. I can also put on some additional background lights. And each airline has its own configuration, or the pilots decide what's the ideal one. I experiment with different ones, but right now I just want to be able to see the instruments better. If it gets darker, I'll put some background colors on, some background lights on. Okay, brake released. We're gonna make our way to runway 1. Oh, like I mentioned earlier, the traffic doesn't care about you. They won't stop for you or anything. It's gonna go right through you, so there'll be no crash of any kind. Another limitation, ground steering for the nose wheel is actually done with the tiller over here. You pull the tiller forward, you turn right, you pull it backward, you turn left. But for the simulation purposes, I can only use my rotor pedals right now. And your rotor pedals in real life actually do give you a little bit of nose steering, but not as much as it's giving me right now. So another limitation. I can simulate the tiller, but I have to use my mouse. But I'm not trying to touch my keyboard or my mouse. I just want to focus on my control column, my rotor pedals, and my throttles. And my throttles also contain the spoiler and flap handles. So we'll get rolling over to runway 1. This artificial intelligence traffic, so you see those United, Air Canada, Delta airplanes. It's relatively new to the simulator. Still a work in progress also. One of the problems is sequencing. You can see right now they're like three planes bunched together, so one of those is going to have to go around. So as they work these kinks and bugs, well, not so much kinks and bugs, but it's just new technology that's being added to the sim, but they have to figure out how to have better separation, better sequencing for those flights. And I'm already at runway 1, I think. Yeah. So I'm gonna wait for this Embraer here to take off. And one thing I should have done as soon as I had the engines on was to ask ground for taxi clearance.
Washington ground American 738 with uniform ready to taxi IFR.
American 738 taxi to and hold short of runway 1 via taxiway Kilo 1 Juliet cross runway 22 Juliet. Contact tower on 119.1 when ready.
Alright, so I acknowledge.
Taxiing hold short runway 1 via taxiway Kilo 1 Juliet cross runway 22 Juliet American 738.
Now I'm going to talk to the tower, see when they're ready for me to take off.
Washington Tower American 738 at runway 1 ready for departure IFR to Philadelphia.
American 738 hold short runway 1. Traffic is on final.
Okay, so I'm going to hold short. There is somebody coming in. Again, now you see 4
American
airplanes coming
4338
in.
contact Potomac departure on 118.9.
So a couple of those guys are going to have to go
Good
around.
day.
And hopefully they'll work these kinks out just to make the experience more realistic. In the meantime, I can pump my landing lights on. This is one of American Airlines' newest 737NG, so it was probably delivered in 2018, so that's why it's got the new light package. The light package was not as simplified before. Same thing with the starter levers. So it's a more modern version, and it's the version that you see in the 737 MAX family. So I got my landing lights on. I want to put on the strobe, which is the flashing white light, so now you can see me from very far away. Got my landing lights on.
American 5138, go around.
And see, you hear those go-arounds? Again, they stack the traffic too tightly. I'm going to arm my auto throttle. My auto brake is ready on indicative takeoff mode. I'm going to turn the weather radar on, even though I mentioned already the simulator still cannot depict a weather radar, a functioning weather radar. I'm also going to turn on TCAS, Traffic Collision Avoidance System. So you can see all these little diamonds here, moving diamonds, that's all the air traffic around me. Again, it's a great tool, situational awareness. You know, ATC is going to guide you, and it's going to guide them, but you also want to use your own situational awareness to know what's around you. And another go around. Again, they stacked all these airplanes together, so that's why there's so many go arounds. So I wonder when I'll be able to take off here. Yeah, there's a lot of airplanes coming in. We need more separation. The flight itself is going to be very, very short. According to my progress, we're going to be flying 132 nautical miles total. We're going to be about 20 to 25 minutes.
Going to 121.7 Delta 5779er.
So we're going to be waiting here. You know, as the traffic gets closer, you can see it turns yellow. If it was really close and dangerous, it would be turning red, and the system will tell you to either climb or descend to avoid a collision in midair.
Inbound ILS runway 1 approach. Delta 1619er Washington Tower. Altimeter 30.0.
And this is Southwest 737.
Cleared ILS runway.
You see some of the glitches. He has no gear, and he's going to land. I don't know how he's going to do it, but okay. But he landed. And I was measuring the photogrammetry. Those of you who fly in our DCA a lot, the airport is reproduced really well. You can see the Washington Monument lit up already. And today has been a sunny and rainy day, off and on showers. So this conditions are being downloaded. It's pretty much real world data right now for this sunset.
Southwest 2638 contact ground on 121.7. American 738 altimeter 30.0.
Okay, that's me.
01 wind 131 at 4. Cleared for takeoff runway 1.
Okay, clear for takeoff, runway 1, American 738.
Cleared for takeoff runway 1 American 738.
I just lowered the heads-up guidance system. Again, another very nice to have tool. It's going to give you awareness for speed, altitude, heading. All in one screen. You don't have to look down all the time. You know, something to tell those new pilots, always trust your instruments. We have a very clear evening, so we can see good visibility and whatnot, but on an overcast, foggy, low vis, whatever you have kind of day, all these instruments are going to be very helpful. And another limitation, I have no first officer, but there are programs that simulate as first officer going through first officer flows. It's basically a crew resource management. So right now I'm doing all the resource managing. It's unrealistic, but not impossible. So I'm ready for takeoff. I'm gonna put in this timer to see how long it's gonna take us from a nose up to touchdown. So I already started it. I'm gonna move the column forward because I want to make sure there's as much friction with the nose gear and the ground until I reach 80 knots. And I'm going to start powering up the engines. Takeoff go around mode set. So I mentioned when we're putting our power at 100%, it's going to be more like 96%. And there's like crazy go around traffic. Again, very unrealistic, but we'll get there to a more realistic depiction soon, I hope.
80 knots.
Okay, 80 knots. Check.
V1.
Check.
Rotate.
Rotating.
Positive rate of climb.
Gear up. Actually got a bit of a tailwind. I'm surprised we were using the northern departure. I mentioned the immediate left turn, so I'm already turning. I'm going to follow the Potomac River. Avoid restricted airspace. Power telling me to contact departure. So again, I mentioned the two-pilot operation. I gotta acknowledge that I'm being changed to Washington departure from Washington Tower. Here's Arlington, where I'm sitting right now, here on the left side of the airplane. Okay, I'm gonna acknowledge the handoff.
124.2 for American 738.
We're accelerating, which is good. And contacting departure.
Potomac departure American 738
And the
is
airplane
passing
already switched to
1,700
climb
feet,
power. You see the
climbing
CLV
11,000
here
feet.
on the center screen. Now it's at
American
93.3.
738, Potomac departure altimeter 30.
And I can go flaps 1 here
Continue to bevel
before we go
as
flaps up.
planned.
And again, following the Potomac River.
Keep speed, not above 220 knots.
Once I to keep my speed below 220. And right now I'm at 212. We're fine. And now we're at flaps up. I can engage the autopilot if I want right now, but I'm gonna wait a few more minutes. Want to make sure I maintain a positive climb.
American 738, please acknowledge.
And again, here's the limitation.
Keep
I need
speed
to
not above 220
remember they're
knots,
talking
American
to me on the radio
738.
constantly, so I gotta answer. I might forget to answer here and there because I'm very focused on my flying. So that's where the pilot not flying is gonna be operating the radios, talking to ATC. But again, it's not impossible to fly by yourself. And we're just gonna continue to follow this navigation track.
Bank angle.
And the bank angle, again, doesn't want me to turn too sharply. 30 degrees is the limit. I'm sure there's going to be some passengers who are not too crazy about making some wild maneuvers. Alright, a few trim adjustments. I'm going to execute the after takeoff checklist, which is going to be
United 4485.
engine bleeds are going to be
and
on.
maintain 2,500 feet.
Packs are going to be on auto. I'm going to turn the switches off here.
Descend and maintain 2,500 feet. United 4485.
Auto brake off. Landing gear up and off. You want to turn the landing gear off because the landing gear is actually using hydraulics. So if you don't need the hydraulics right now, it's fine just to turn it off. And they'll come back on once you lower the gear. And one more turn.
American 738, contact Washington Center on 134.15.
And another transition.
Good day.
Bank angle.
134.15 for American 738.
And I'm going to go ahead and arm my navigation modes and pass them over to the autopilot here. And we're going to contact Washington Center. So my checklist is complete. Engine bleeds on, packs auto, landing gear up and off, flaps are up with no lights. After takeoff checklist complete. A little bit of rain is hitting the windshields. My initial altitude is 11,000 feet. So I'm already going to level up there. I'm above 10,000 feet, I can turn the landing lights off. And another thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to skip this waypoint so we can go to the next one. Less turning involved. Yeah, looks like a very colorful sunset this evening with these clouds and this rain. Holding at 11,000. Let me see what Center has to say about a final cruise. I want my cruise
Washington
to be
Center, American 738, 11,000 feet.
like the computer suggested, maybe
American
50,
738,
150.
Washington Center altimeter 30.04. Continue to reef as planned.
3004 altimeter. 11,000 feet. Now let's see if ATC is gonna let me go to 150 for my cruise or keep me at 11. When I flew,
Southwest 2530, did you copy?
when I flew to Philadelphia on the Embraer 190, our cruise was 10,000. So right now I'm at 11,000. So that'll probably be the final cruise. So again, the ATC and the flight computer are not gonna agree to the cruising, so you just gotta pay attention to what they assign you. I'm zooming out a little bit here. Okay, so we're on our way to Philly. We're 6 minutes out of DC. Yeah, I'm definitely assuming we're gonna be at 11,000 feet, so I'm gonna switch my cruise to 11,000.
Washington Center Southwest
Flight level
1444,
110.
flight level 280.
I'm gonna
Southwest
do it in the
1444
pressurization.
Washington Center. Continue as planned.
Okay. ...105 nautical miles pretty much to Philly. Expecting arrival in Philly at 23:51 Zulu, and right now it's 23:29 Zulu. So like I said, it's a very fast flight. I mentioned that I had this option to put additional background lights if I want a little more visibility. I don't want to blind myself. There is a dome, and I can put this dome on bright, but since I gotta look out the window and it's gonna get darker, I would rather have less light in the cockpit. There is a bright option for the dome, and there's a more dim option, but I'm gonna turn them both off. I'm just gonna add a little bit of background lights.
Climb and maintain flight level tree 60 American 1554.
So I can put some background lights here in the panel. Just very, very minor. Don't need to add a lot. Okay. I can lift the screen up for a while during this part of the flight. But as I mentioned earlier, the screen, heads-up guidance system screen really prevents me from having to put my head down and see where we are, what we're doing. And I had mentioned that earlier for people who are new to flying, trusting your instruments. So if you look at our instruments here, we have a vertical and a lateral situation. This is basically the right altitude and the right heading. So you see this on this display. You see vertical pink line, a horizontal pink line making a perfect X, or a perfect T, if you will, or cross. That's what we want to be. We don't want to be deviating from that. We're going to be making a left turn here at Delta Oscar Charlie Tango Romeo in about 7.5 nautical miles. And I'm on autopilot, so the airplane's going to do all that by itself. I mentioned earlier, I'm probably going to have to ignore some ATC instructions to get to the right altitude. One of the drawbacks right now with Flight Simulator is ATC is waiting way too long to allow you to descend. And that would essentially make you overfly your destination. So when that happens, I have to pretty much come to a holding pattern and lose altitude. And that way I can intercept my airport approach correctly. So we'll see what ATC has up its sleeve here when it comes to descent. In this display where it says Tango/Delta, that's the top of descent. That's where I'm supposed to start descending. And we're probably we're overflying the Baltimore area right now. Yeah, so we're leaving Maryland, gonna hit Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, very fast.
American 1554, you are 500 feet below your assigned altitude. Climb and maintain flight level tree 60.
While we cruise, since we are about 30-ish nautical miles away from descending,
Washington Center, Delta 581.
we're going to be landing in a 9,500 foot runway in Philly.
Delta 581 tree.
I want
Washington
to
Center altimeter, 30
tune into the
decimal
ILS
zero
frequency, the
continue
instrument landing
as
system.
planned.
I mentioned that if I have good visibility, I want to try to hand fly the aircraft as much as possible. But if we have low vis, I'll just let the ILS system guide me down, and I'll disengage the autopilot when I have positive visual contact with the runway. So we're gonna go to channel 10895 on the ILS.
Washington Center, United 1360, flight level tree 20. United 1360 Washington Center, continue as planned.
And another cool feature for the heads-up guidance system, I can enter the runway's length and the runway's altitude, which I mentioned was 86 feet. So here it is, elevation, 86. This is going to give me a very accurate approach data from the heads-up guidance system, should I choose to use it. I mentioned the runway was 9,500 feet long. Enter. The HGS definitely comes in handy, low vis operations, but I can also use it for this good visibility operation. And right now we are gonna choose, well, okay, we're right now 70 nautical miles from Philly. For landing, most of the time we're going to be choosing flaps 30. We have three options here. Flaps 30 with 146 knots. And when you consider a 5-knot wind correction, it's going to be 151 knots in final. Again, my pilot friends can correct me if I'm wrong, but adding those extra 5 knots, you don't want to get any surprises, any wind shears, anything when your airspeed can all of a sudden drop, and you might be dealing with a stall situation. So it's one of the reasons we want to add that those extra knots, and hopefully we're landing into the wind and not with the wind on our backs. That's another big tactic. And we're gonna be switching over to
American 738.
Still Washington Center.
Washington Center, American 738, 11,000 feet.
American 738, Washington Center altimeter, 30.03. Continue to Delta Quebec Oscar as planned.
So right now here in DC is 7:37 local time. 1937 local time is 23:37 Zulu time. So it's September 10th. So the sun is setting earlier and earlier each day as we approach fall and then winter. But it looks like a very nice sunset, lots of color. No turbulence of any kind, very smooth flight at this low altitude. And like I mentioned, the last time I did this flight in the real world was a Embraer 190, and we leveled off at, well, we're going northeast, so we leveled off at 11,000 also. If we're been in the direction of Washington, in the southwest direction, it'd be at 10,000 feet for separation.
American 5459er descend and maintain 15,000 feet.
Once I land, I'm gonna have the auto brake help me slow down. I can put my engines in reverse thrust.
Washington Center, Delta
And it is
5813
normal
is
routine,
passing flight level
normal procedure to
190
use reverse
flight
thrust.
level
When you fly and you're
210.
sitting next to the engine, after you land, you see
Delta
the engine rev up.
5813 Washington
The
Center,
engine is revving up, but it's
continue as
actually, the flow is being redirected to the opposite direction, so the airplane slows down faster. Well, we also know fuel is very expensive. So I'm probably going to use minimal reverse thrust. We have again a long runway, a light airplane relatively speaking. So I use a little bit of reverse thrust, but mostly rely on the auto brake to slow me down. And I'm also waiting for this vectoring into the final approach for runway 27. I have not been told to descend yet, so I'm at 11,000 feet. 11,000 feet, 53 nautical miles out of Philly. So we should be over
climb and maintain
Wilmington,
flight
Delaware.
level tree 30, Delta 5813.
And let me see what the computer is saying. See, the computer wants me to descend already, and I agree. So I'm gonna disobey ATC and go to 3,000 feet. I'm gonna keep my speed above 250 until I get to flight level 100, 10,000. Below 10,000, I'm gonna have my speed at 250, and I'll slow it down even further to 240, then 220. We want to come in as slow as possible.
American 738 descend and maintain 3,000 feet. Keep speed not above 250 knots.
Okay, so now I got my descent command. Took a little
Descend
longer.
and maintain 3,000 feet. Keep speed not above
And he already wanted to
250 knots.
restrict
American
250.
738.
Okay, so I've restricted 250. I can use my air brakes, my spoilers to also so the opening. So you see this handle, it can be in flight mode. I'm gonna actually arm it for touchdown. So once the main gear touches the ground, the spoiler is gonna fully deploy. So that's gonna help create more drag, keep the plane on the ground. One thing I noticed about the 737NG, it really loves to fly and fly fast. It doesn't like to slow down. It doesn't like to descend. So that's why you have to have a very controlled maneuvering approach, if you will. And again, right now you don't see a lot of visuals around you right now. I think we're inside of a cloud.
125.4
We're
for
switching
American
frequencies here.
738. Philadelphia approach American 738 is at 9,000 feet, descending 3,000 feet.
American 738 Philadelphia approach altimeter 30.03. Continue to Delta Quebec Oscar as planned.
So again, right now we don't have anything outside for reference. So this is why I'm saying Corsair instruments. So we could be fully blinded outside, but I see that I'm on Corsair now. I have vertical speed and my horizontal speed. I'm tracking with the navigation of where I want to be. Your body can really fool you. If you're not seeing any visual reference points outside, let's say you're turning, but then you stop the turn, your body might still think you're turning. So it is essential that you trust your instruments. They are going to be your best friend, especially with no visibility conditions. Again, rookie pilots, I remember being told by my flight instructor, trust your instruments. Some pilot mistakes, even some fatal pilot mistakes throughout history have been for not trusting your instruments. It's very, very important. And obviously the pilots are not familiar with all these intricacies involved in flying. One of the questions I get very often is, can you recreate a cheesy 1970s air disaster movie where some poor civilian needs to be able to land an aircraft because the pilots had to fish like an airplane? I really have mixed feelings about that. I think for those of us who
Maintain present heading
enjoy
and altitude,
simming,
expect
we know
ILS runway
all the
27 right approach
procedures.
via men's transition clear to
We
Minch
know where
American
all the
738.
dials are, all the switches of the radios are. We know what the control surfaces do. But I think when you cannot feel the airplane, when you cannot get the force feedback, I think if I were to find myself in a real 737 trying to bring it down to the ground, I would just probably use my procedures to line it up into an automated landing, let it land on its own, as opposed to me trying to mess with it. So I don't think it's as easy as the movies want you to think, that you can land an airplane on your own. And you can be talked down to by the ground, I'm sure, but you gotta, first of all, you gotta be calm, and also kind of figure out where everything is. So being familiar with it definitely helps. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that. I think I would be in a fully immersed simulation if this was like one of those multi-million-dollar simulators that the airlines have, where you can actually feel the plane moving, you can feel the force on the stick, whether it's very hard, very soft. But that's just a luxury that I don't have right now. I'm sure we'll get there. There are some very hardcore simmers who have built what they call home cockpits. Very expensive, but also probably very expensive for electricity, your utility bill. And also, I'm sure whatever room they use for their home cockpit has to get very hot too. So we made it to 3,000 pretty fast here. I'm gonna go ahead and get my speed down to 220. And let's see. We've talked to Philly approach. So for my descent checklist, I'm going to go over a few things here. I already set my landing altitude back in Washington, so we know Philly's 86 feet above sea level. Recall, do we have any warnings right now? I'm going to just turn this on. No active warnings, so we're all good. My auto brake is set to 2. So there's 4 levels, 1, 2, 3, and maximum. So 2 is really good. These airplanes today, they used to have steel brakes, but now they have carbon brakes, more efficient, less wear and tear. I've already entered my landing data, so I mentioned that my reference speed is 146 plus 5, so it's going to be 151. And we pretty much did the briefing knowing we're going to be landing on 27 right at Philly. Altimeter right now for approach is 3003. I'm going to get one more confirmation from the tower once I get my clearance to land. And I also want to add a waypoint so I can make a very nice wide U-turn into runway 27. Yeah, Philly's overcast and rainy. Should I turn my windshield wipers on? Not really. I'm going to be using my screen for landing. So here's my HES screen. So I can turn the wipers on if I want. They're up here. But I'll probably going to be happy just using the screen. So let's see. So I can put the wipers in 2 different speeds. Here's max speed for the wiper. Here's a low speed. And here's an intermittent speed, very slow. Alright, so I'm gonna turn it off. Here's the airport. These blue lights are the taxi lights. And the white ones are going to be the runway. So I'm going to be making a U-turn here pretty soon. I want to find a waypoint. I mentioned this earlier. The way this is the way I'm being vectored in, I'm not too crazy about it. That's going to be a very tight U-turn. So I'm going to add an extra waypoint. I'm going to get my flaps to 1, so I'm going to put my speed at 200 knots. Again, I'm going to slow down. I don't want to be too hot on final. And in the real world, an airport like Philly, they're sequencing a lot of airplanes to take off and land, so I do want to slow down, give other people room, people ahead of me, people behind me. So we're going to go flaps 1. Going to be holding at 3,000 here for a few minutes. And again, no reference outside, very little reference outside, so again, instruments will tell you where you are. I'm going to go ahead and lower the screen also so we can get some situational awareness looking straight ahead. And you can see those drops of rain hitting the windshield. But that doesn't affect my display. My display is perfectly clear. And a little bit of an outside view. Here's where we are. the simulator also gives me some inside views. So here's somebody sitting in first class, what they see. So you can see the seats here. Somebody sitting in the back. Alright, so we're going to continue. We left DC 26 minutes ago. I was expecting like a 20 to 25 minute flight. But with all this slowing down, with all the turning, it makes sense for it to be a little longer than 20 to 25 minutes. So we're at minute 27 right now. I mentioned your artificial intelligence traffic is still a work in progress. I'm not hearing too many traffic instructions right now, which means the traffic will probably deactivated on its own. But after a few more updates and a few tweaks, I think it should be a more reliable program, just to add a little bit of more realism to the experience. Otherwise, it's going to be you flying, no other traffic to worry about. That's a little boring, so you want it to be as realistic as possible. And if we get our weather radar on, right now we have a lot of light rain around us, and there will be a lot of green colors on my navigation display right now with my weather radar on. And I said precipitation gets more intense, it will be yellow. The super intense precipitation will be red, which you want to avoid, you want to go around. Never try to fly a plane into that, especially when it's cold, because you're going to get icing on your wings and you become essentially a rock and it's going to sink. Alright, so we're starting to do our base turn here. I'm going to slow it down to 180 and get my flaps to 5 degrees. You hear the engines there spooling down. And we're going to go flaps 5. We're going to intercept the localizer for the ILS on 27 right. And like I said, I plan on turning the autopilot off once I have positive visual with the runway. And I'm being vectored into the airport with a bit of a tailwind. Right now it's coming from the southeast at 5 knots. I'm going to be landing to the west. I'm going to see if that changes, because I mentioned adding those extra 5 knots to your reference speed on final. You want to avoid wind shear. Again, wind shear, if you cannot react quickly enough, your airplane can pretty much hit the ground very hard. High vertical speed, so you just have to watch out for that. And we're going to be coming up on our turn to final here. I'm going to get down to 170. I'm using auto throttle right now, but I can also go manual throttle. Auto throttle is going to use less fuel than a human being would, but I also like to practice manual throttle just to remember that I'm the pilot. I just don't want to rely on a computer to add or decrease thrust. And I'm sure, again, pilot friends, correct me if I'm wrong, each airline has their own procedures. For example, last time I checked, Southwest does not allow its pilots to use auto throttle. They have to use manual throttle the whole time. But this is a while back. I don't know if this is still the case. And again, I recommend watching these videos from real-world pilots. They have a lot of experience and they can explain every single little intricacy here for systems and flight. Again, it's extremely fascinating. Alright, and we're going to go flaps, still flaps 5. I'm going to go ahead and lower the gear. We're going to add some drag. And as soon as I see some vertical speed downward, we've intercepted the localizer, we've intercepted the glide slope. Yep, now we're going to be on a downward trajectory towards runway 27 right. See little diamonds here, so vertically we're lined up. The diamond, the pink diamond, is on the white dash here, and now the horizontal one will be lining up with this.
Climb and maintain 3,000 feet. Altimeter
And there is that ATC annoyance.
2,500.
I'm on final,
Climb and maintain
but it wants me to
3,000
climb,
feet. American
so
738.
not perfect. We're gonna go 151 here for my final speed. And again, no first officer, so I'm gonna start doing some of these preparations for landing. Continuous start switches. I'm gonna arm my speed brake, so make sure it's on. My landing gear is down, and I want to get to flaps 30. So make sure we don't. I still got a tailwind, so I definitely want to be careful with the throttles here. I don't want to get too close to rev speed with a tailwind just to avoid the wind shear. And we're dealing with some weather. It's not awful weather. It's light rain. The winds are not very gusty, but again, I've been vectoring to runway 27 with a tailwind essentially. So it would have been nice to do runway 9. So I'm ignoring ATC. If anything, I'm gonna switch this ATC channel off because they were not able to hand me over to the tower. That's too bad, but it'll get better. Okay, so you can see with the heads-up guidance system, you can see there is a T, a big circle, a little circle. That means I am on target. I'm just gliding into the runway on the correct glide path, correct speed. Flaps 30. That's going to be my final setting for landing. I see the runway lights already. I mentioned I want to go manual. So here's where I say I have control.
1,000.
When I deactivate the autopilot, you hear a warning that I got to turn off. I have control. Okay, the airplane is mine. I got a tailwind. I'm also going to take control of the auto throttles here. So now I got throttles and I got steering. I see the runway. Keep it about 151. See the PAPI lights, white and red. So it's going to use this HDS screen to just guide me into the runway.
400.
It's going to be a wet runway, so we'll see how the braking behaves.
300.
Nice and easy. Landing.
200. $100. 50. 30. 20.
Okay, just want to kiss the ground.
10.
Perfect. Okay. Spoiler out. Reverse green. A little bit of nose steering here. You don't want to overcorrect. So eventually it's going to brake very fast. So I'm going to disengage the reverse thrust. I'm going to disengage the auto brake. I'm going to get off of this next exit. Yeah, here we go. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to get out of the runway and contact ground. "35 minutes. No stop to touchdown." And I reset my view here a bit. Screen up. I'm gonna come into the gate with an APU running. And I go back to a steady light. I don't need my strobe anymore. I can turn my weather radar off. I can acknowledge that I turn my auto throttle off so that light stops flashing. I can turn off my traffic radar and turn off my auto brake. So we're in Philadelphia, now we're gonna just find a place to park. American Airlines. I guess I could ask ground for a gate assignment.
Philadelphia ground American 738 request taxi to the gate.
American 738 taxi to gate Alpha 2 via taxiway Victor Juliet.
Okay, we're going to gate Alpha 2.
Taxiing to gate Alpha 2 via taxiway Victor Juliet American 738.
I'm gonna turn on the moving map display. I haven't been to Philly in about 8 years, so I just want to make sure I fully remember where everything is. I have an idea of where gate Alpha 2 is, and it also gave me directions as to what taxi lights, what taxi ways to follow. So here are the A terminals, and let me see exactly where I'll find 2. Okay, so Alpha 2 is going to be in the second pier. Alright, so I'm going to simulate a moving map display to get me to Alpha 2. I am running on taxi lights right now. So another limiting factor right now, the splash of the taxi and runway turnoff and main lights, I think it could be a lot more stronger on the ground. It doesn't look very strong, but there's enough taxiway lighting indications so you know where to go. And I'm also gonna, once I'm here in the tarmac with all this light, I'm gonna turn off my taxi light. I don't want to blind any of the ground crew. That'd be kind of rude. So I know where gate 2 is going to be, so I'm going to be turning into it here pretty soon. It's going to be the next one, the next left turn. A little bit of air. Okay, yeah. So all the AI traffic disappeared. Like I mentioned, it's a work in progress. It'd be nice to see all the airplanes on the ground and make it look more realistic, but we'll get there, like I said. Let's see where Alpha 2 is. I'm going to slow down here a bit. Alpha 2 is one of these gates. There's Alpha 3. Alpha 5. There are additional programs that can give you a realistic guidance into the gate, but I'm not going to buy them right now. They have a marshaller, a virtual marshaller here, so he or she is going to guide me into the precise parking spot. This is gate A2. Turn the nose a little bit. There we go. Okay. And as soon as it makes an X with those lights, we're going to stop. Yep, okay, all set. Parking brake on. APU is running, so I'm going to turn the engines off. Seatbelt off. APU generators on. While I connect the ground power, I'm going to leave the APU running. I'm going to turn the red beacon off, the anti-collision light off. Okay, there's my marshaller. I think my marshaller will eventually walk away. And most ground services I'd be requesting via the radio, but for some simplification I can request them here from the flight management computer. So we're gonna set some chocks, set the blocks pretty much. Request a ground power so I can turn my APU off and save some fuel. So now I can turn my brakes off because I'm on chocks now. So I'm gonna slide around anywhere. It is 23 degrees Celsius. Yeah, let's get an air conditioning unit connected to the airplane, so that way I don't have to use my own air conditioning. And some of the ground services, we want those galleys to swap all our beverages and snacks out. And our baggage. So we want a loader on the rear, a loader in the forward section, and then we also want the carts obviously to transport baggage from the airplane to baggage claim. And I'm gonna check the status of my air conditioning unit. It's connecting. I got ground power on, so I'm gonna switch to ground power. Okay, APU off. Fuel pumps off completely. Can turn the window heat off. Probes off, hydraulics are set. And I can also just do a regular shutdown checklist. So fuel pumps off, probe heat off, hydraulic panel is set, the flaps are up. Parking brake is off now, we are on blocks. The engine start levels are on cutoff. Weather radar has been turned off. How much do I want to secure the cabin? If there's another crew coming, I don't have to turn just everything off. I mean, I can be courteous and just put this checklist back to the beginning. Well, they'll be using the checklist on the iPad too, so keep that in mind. Inertial reference system, this was a very short flight, but it's always a good idea to just turn off the inertial reference system and just line it up again based on your last GPS position to get more accurate navigation data. And now we have external air conditioning, so I'm going to just turn off the packs that provide air to the passengers because we have air coming from the ground. This also will be happening a lot faster as far as getting this jetway connected, but the limitations require
Philadelphia
me
ground American
to connect the
738.
jetway.
Could you please connect the
So
jetway to the aircraft?
that's why I'm requesting it right now, and the jet is going to make itself over to the aircraft. And you know, the passengers are probably just running over each other right now, trying to get out of the airplane. Typical. And we're going to do an external view. You can see everything's being connected. For those of you who like computer graphics, you can tell it's a pretty impressive program. These are very nice graphics. The airplane's being lit by the lights in the tarmac for the most part. And you can see the galleys, the baggage loaders, the gates on. And that was a pretty brief demo of how the simulator works with some kind of narration. So it's my first narration. I hope I'm coming in loud and clear. I'm always looking for feedback from people who are currently flying the 737. I love to learn more. I watch a lot of cockpit videos and procedures. And again, always willing to learn new things. I don't take any feedback personally. I want to be, even though I'm in the comfort of my own home, I want to do this as best as possible, as accurately as possible, as safely as possible. So if you tuned in the past hour or so, thank you for tuning in, and we'll be talking to you during another flight. Have a good rest of your Sunday.